Hello, everyone. It's Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Ooh. So today I'm going to go over your weekly forecast. And I want to let you know, as always, I try to give an update before I jump into things. So, as you all know that follow me, I'm moving. Um, and so I am packing, and on May 16th, they're going to be picking up my pod and shipping it to where I live. So from May 16th until early June, I am not going to be on here. And I just want to let you know that don't worry, like I'll be back. I just, I'll have to unpack and all of that and get things set up. So I just don't want anyone, to be concerned or whatever if you don't see me on here. So leading up to May 16th, I will do, a weekly forecast. And again, my books are open, and you'll see my appointments in June and July. And if you are wanting a reading, you can do that now. You can purchase that now. You can book it if you want, if you feel called to. Um, and I'll be doing that in the middle of July and June, and I can't wait to see you guys and to, be back and settled in and um rocking and rolling. So I wanted to give an update on that. So let's talk about this week. This week, I'm going to talk about the transits leading up to the Pluto Mars um, opposition that is going to be exact on the 26th here in America, but the 27th in other parts of the world. And I will share that chart with you and go over that. But I'm going to talk about these energies without a chart leading up to it first. Um, and you'll see a lot of this in that chart as well. So this week is, it's really interesting because we came out of the eclipses. During the eclipses, we had Mercury and Venus retrograde. Thankfully, um, you know, we've gone over that mountain. And they're direct and forward moving now. And before the eclipse, we had Mars stationed direct, and it had retrograded um, in December at 6 degrees Leo. And in September is whenever it was in Cancer. So the reason why I bring this up, just to give like this foundation of sinking and dropping into this week, is essentially since, you know, the last half of September up until May 2nd of this year, we've had some very, very impactful retrogrades going on. Um, we had the first Pluto Mars opposition in Capricorn and Cancer. And then in December, um, you know, Mars stationed retrograde at 6 degrees Leo. And then it retrograded all the way back into Cancer. And so this was this time of really us getting a taste of Mars and Leo in this one sense of a way, of really having certain desires within us ignited around our own creative self-actualization. Each one of us, our sun rules that transiting Mars. And so it's speaking to where you give meaning and purpose to your life in a creative way. All right. And so there were new desires that were, could be seeded into your consciousness in December, around this. And then that retrograde happened. And it said, hold up, pump the brakes. And it says, you've got some unfinished business to do, right? You know, and it went back into Cancer. And it was really speaking to this function of needing to nurture and to act on the desires to revisit certain emotional patterns in our lives in order to understand them, in order to resolve them. Um, and during this time period, we had Venus retrograde. And that retrograde started in Aries. She's still in her shadow period right now, okay? And that essentially, planted seeds of jump-starting a new way of inwardly relating to ourselves, Venus. But Mars was the ruler of that Venus in Cancer at that time. There's things that we're needing to heal within our inner relationship to self and needing to go back and revisit past relationships or reflect on them, this, that, and the other, to really get a sense of um, the ways in which we related to ourselves and how that manifested outwardly through who we attracted into our lives. And it was really asking for this healing process, especially as Venus slid back into the sign of Pisces. And it, a lot of healing, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of compassion, a lot of revisiting where we gave ultimate meaning and all types of dynamics that were wanting to be released and surrendered to in order to really start this new evolutionary process of how we relate to ourselves and who and what we attract into our lives. And then, Mars stationed direct right before the eclipses. And so it was having us set into motion those new patterns of emotional dynamics that we felt called on a soul level, what we desired to initiate. And then we had these eclipses, and things were ending and new things were beginning, right? The Virgo lunar eclipse, the Aries solar eclipse. And Mercury was there hanging out retrograde, helping us to throw off all types of thinking that pertain to how we related to ourselves, the messages we took in, and where we were needing to self-correct and to purge these old dynamics. Now we have this period of, all three of these planets are now direct. And we're going to get the last and final Mars-Pluto opposition, the second in, Aquarius and Leo. And the buildup towards this is very illuminating. And it's still like this dynamic of we're initiating, but we feel this need to really, in order to full throttle go forward, we're having to really understand what all is needing to be released and healed. And we've been coming into awareness, and there's more awareness that can come into. And you've got to remember there's this triple conjunction happening this week. It's felt throughout the totality of the week. There's just some different placements that I'm going to go into with this triple conjunction. But it's like this build up and initiation and forgiveness But the North Node is always going to represent the new choices that we're needing to make on an emotional level as it's bringing up South Node content of our prior emotional choices and dynamics that we are North Node needing to make the new choices around. And so I just want you to think about all of this. And I want you to think back to September and everything that you have been really working so hard to understand in order to grow, in order to evolve, and to heal and to feel different, to experience something differently. We are in this period within the collective where so much is going on. Things are going to continue to go on. But on personal levels, it's giving us an opportunity to really confront, excuse my language, just how fucked up shit can get whenever things are not rooted in timeless, universal, natural laws, Pisces. How there is destruction and exclusion and hurt and pain and disillusionment and a lack of empathy and a lack of compassion and separation. And really, what that is reflecting to us is that things are reaching a critical moment on a global level, dealing with not just community between humans, but all sentient life. And there are some people who are just not going to get it because they're not there. And that's okay. This is a process. Evolution is about expanding the consciousness. And we all start somewhere, just like we can naturally see it through birth, right? You kind of come in, you don't smile for a couple of months, you're like a little blob, and then you smile, and then eventually you hit another milestone, and then you've got to, you know, do tummy time, and then you've got to you've got to lift your head, and you've got to do the little sumo push-ups, and then you've got to eventually build some strength and have the courage to stand up and balance, and then you crawl and fall and tumble, and then eventually you start walking, and then eventually you're able to run and you're able to talk, and all of this, right? So there's a new birthing process on the one hand that's coming for the collective, and it's based on free will. And it's really uncomfortable. I feel like whenever there are those of us who are extremely empathetic and feel what's going on. But as we evolve, the dynamic of the evolutionary journey of each soul is about eliminating separating desires, period. And it's about coming back into oneself and soul recognition and understanding that we're all interconnected and that our needs are not going to always come outside of ourselves. Sure, we need shelter, we need money with how society is, structured, all of this. We see how that has been distorted. But whenever it comes down to a foundation, to the center, to the bottom line, we are all, no matter where you're at in your evolutionary journey, no matter how advanced or non-advanced, expanded, constricted, however you want to put it, it's not a hierarchy. It's not one's better than, it just is what is, okay? It's a natural progression. But wherever you are, this is a time that really speaks to the elimination of how and what we gave meaning to and what we valued, and learning new ways that are more natural and universal to integrate within us and to feel secure within. All right. Just within oneself. There can be other stuff going on out here, but to really feel secure within oneself. And I'm not talking about I'm losing my house or this, that, or the other, or, I'm talking about there are even people who they've lost everything and yet they still feel secure within themselves because they've tapped into something greater. They've tapped into that universal timelessness of I can still value myself. I can still nurture myself even, you know, psychologically or emotionally. It doesn't have to be physically all the time. Of course, we need that to survive, but there are ways that people are changing the ways in which that they think, relate, and understand dynamics. And so this is really this removal and elimination and dissolving process of old structures of how we've related to each other on a global level through humanity, Pluto and Aquarius, how we've related to ourselves, how some of us have over-identified with the more temporal ways of relating because that was what was known, it's what we were taught. Um, and it's about getting back into stripping down and all of that conditioning and really getting back to that root on a universal, timeless level. That's when people start showing up and helping and extending their hand in a way that is not with strings attached. It's in a way that's with compassion and grace and humility. And it's not rooted in, if I do this, what can you do for me? We are seeing it show up, here where I live in the United States through the crisis, South Node in Virgo. There is a wave of people who are, for whatever reason, whether or not they're just now coming into this understanding through disillusionment, whether or not they've always known it. However, they are showing up and they are coming together in community and standing in solidarity. And they are being compassionate and forgiving and um, courageous, is what I want to say. And this is dealing with the social structures and people wanting to get back to inclusion, right? Yet there is like this global battle going on. It's like um, we're really seeing this dichotomy right now of distortion and natural coming together and butting heads. And this is just a manifestation of what also is being reflected within each one of us as well. We each have things that can be distorted and natural. And it's about confronting and making a choice around who are you going to be and how are you going to show up in the world? And what does that look like for you? What are you giving meaning to? What are you valuing? And how do you want to be known? Who do you want to be known for? How do you want to be known for? And I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about if you could, you know, you die and you reflect, what would that look like? Would you have a sense of pride? Would you know that you really went for it? That you could have failed in some ways, but each time you got up and you tried again and you did the best that you could, and along the way you learned, right? Uh, the value being in the effort, not always necessarily the outcome. It's like how often did you put in the effort? That is a legacy that one can reflect back on and have a sense of dignity and love and self-respect for, that no matter what, I kept trying. I did it sincerely. I did it with love. I did it with compassion. And I did it with humility in the face of adversity. I utilized my anger or, my rage, my resentment in a constructive way, not to harm people, but to empower myself and to empower others. I didn't let that take me down. That is what we are seeing globally. There are choices to be made. How do you want to utilize what is coming up for you in a constructive way? And so this leads me, that was long-winded, but it was important to say, this leads me to today, April 19th. The sun entered into Taurus. Okay, it is ruled by Mars and Leo. So there's a dynamic here. And by the way, they are squaring each other in what we call a first quarter square. A first quarter square is a crisis in action. There's a crisis in action in the sense of self-actualizing around how you relate to yourself, Sun and Taurus, and Mars and Leo acting on the desires where you can be in self-love and self-dignity. This can also be with Venus and this triple conjunction that is going to be felt all week with the North Node and Saturn. Venus during this day, today, is still balsamic to Saturn, and both are balsamic to the North Node. It's like, what do you need to release and to surrender to and to forgive in order to experience self-love? Mars and Leo, ruled by Sun and Taurus. Is there something that you have internalized? Is there something that isn't what you thought that it was going to be, and maybe you weren't in self-love? This is also with Venus balsamic to Saturn and the North Node, Venus ruling the Sun. What is it that you need to let go of from the past that deals with how you structured your reality? And how did that show up for you? And where do you need to cult cultivate a deeper sense of personal meaning to your life, right? Where do you need to show up as your own authority? This is also where these energies still balsamic Saturn and Venus to the North Node, where we are starting to understand what once was hidden is now being illuminated, right? Globally, the deception, Pisces, the lies, Jupiter squaring the nodes, um, the crisis, where we could have been hiding who we were and being one way in front of people and then feeling very differently. This is really about, on personal levels, releasing this in order to become more grounded and secure within oneself. It's really about the sun and Taurus, ruled by Mars and Leo, and Venus and Pisces ruling the sun. This is truly about whatever emotional wounds that you have are only going to be healed by yourself. Taurus, that is self-reliance. There are no dependencies. No one else is going to do it for you. No matter what has happened or transpired and all that you've come to understand about your emotional patterns and the ways in which they have played out, that is not ever going to be healed by someone else. That is only going to be healed by you. And Mars and Leo says, show up and have the courage to have that self-love, to heal what needs to be healed, to break free of the past. And that is that call to action, right? I'm scared. I've only ever known this. And so it's asking for one to act on that self-love, that self-dignity, to really understand the actual reality that only you can heal you, that the only person you can depend on is yourself and your spiritual relationship. If you're there, if you aren't, that's okay too. Like, it can come from within. That's the first onset of that. So Mars is also trining Neptune. Neptune is in Aries, obviously. So Mars is its ruler, and Neptune is ruling all of this Pisces. This is called a first quarter square. This is where a first quarter square can be where something is illuminated to us around where it's a non-growth situation, right? Do you know what you need to act upon, but you're not making that choice? Neptune ruling the North Node, the new choices. Are you not making that new choice? And so this is asking for you to make that choice, have the courage, be in self-love, self-respect, self-dignity, and that a lot of integration can come to the forefront with that. All right. Mars is also trining Mercury, and that's in a last quarter trine. So that's a crisis in consciousness. But I'm remembering, all of these messages, Mercury, that I've taken in. Jupiter is in Gemini, squaring the nodes, ruled by this Mercury. And it's asking for us to release and to heal old beliefs, old messages. So this last quarter trine is also asking for this action, right? But I don't know what to believe. This is where you trust your gut and your intuition. What is true and authentic for you? That is what matters in this moment. And then you act on it, even if it's scary, because that will set a new foundation. It will set something new into motion. Okay. It'll help to continue this process of wrapping up what needs to be wrapped up. That can't get done if we don't create the action, right? So there are lots of lessons in self-reliance, healing oneself, deepening a spiritual relationship, being within self-love and self-dignity, and having the courage to act on what needs to be acted upon. All right. Then on the 20th, we have Pluto sextiling Mercury. Pluto in Aquarius, sextiling Mercury and Aries. This is really helping us to, and this is a crescent phase sextile. It's helping us to integrate our individuality, what we've been learning and discovering about ourselves, and to put it into action. All right. It's to create new thought patterns. It's about creating new ways of thinking, of expressing, that are in a more loving, kind way. And this is also where we can have a deeper sense of objective awareness around what it is we're here to do that's going to give us a more deeper sense of purpose and meaning in our life, right? Just look to your sun and your chart. Where is that? What is it aspecting? What house is it in? What sign is it in? This is going to give you a lot of content around new ways of initiating and learning about that creative purpose in your life. What you're needing to do, taking everything that you've been learning and funneling it through that, right? I've said this before and I've given this example. I have the sun in Capricorn in my ninth house. It's really around structuring my life around my own sense of authority. And that happens through understanding my personal truths and living that out authentically. Um, and so, you know, Pluto in Aquarius, sextiling Mercury and Aries is really where we get to initiate another a newer cycle of deepening our individuation process, of understanding this is what makes me unique. This is what makes me my own individual. And it's about discovering it more and doing it with joy and love and creativity, because that Mars is ruling that Mercury. Um, and again, with Uranus and Taurus, it's helping with this transformation. It's helping to culminate these energies. These are just repeating signatures throughout this week. Then on the 24th, Venus, the North Node, and Saturn, they are all conjunct at that 26-degree mark, ruled by that Neptune. But this is where we have Saturn and a new phase to the North Node. It's crossed over, all right? Finally, right? It's been building up to this. This is like all of this awareness is asking for a new structure to be put in place. Neptune and Aries ruling that. Saturn is saying that this is initiating. Again, it goes back to self-love. Mars and Leo. This is also about, this is a co-creative process with Source. This is a natural way for each one of us to spiritualize in whatever way that we're conceptualizing our spiritual relationship, or what God is, or Source, or the universe, however you want to frame it, whatever feels authentic to you. All right. So it's setting this in motion and having the courage to do it. Venus is still balsamic though. So it's like more insight is coming into our conscious awareness. And that is going to be through our own inner voice, all right? And how we're relating to ourselves, paying attention to that. It's going to help us understand and see what new structures are showing up and what old structures are still needing to be culminated, okay? And then on the 23rd, Pluto is square the sun in what we call a last quarter square. Venus is still balsamic to the North Node and to Saturn. This is interesting because Pluto and Aquarius squaring the sun and Taurus, and a last quarter square is this Aquarian dynamic of needing to throw off what has come before, to create the action to throw off the past, to liberate from it in order to strengthen that inner relationship to self. And we have Venus, the ruler of the sun, and the ruler of Pluto's ruler, Uranus, and she is balsamic still. So it's helping us to actually know what is it from the past that actually needs to be thrown off. Okay. Again, it's repeating over and over and over and over again. It's helping us to understand this needs to be thrown off, and this new structure is wanting to come into form. Saturn and a new phase to that. And then on the 24th, Venus finally crosses over the North Node at 27 degrees. So it's like that's where we can feel this dynamic of, okay, I understand what I'm being called to do. what it's going to take for me to have this transformative healing process. I'm understanding where I have been confronted with things that aren't what I thought that they were. They weren't the dream, the expectation that I had. It's helping us to really confront, why that happens. Where did you give ultimate meaning outside of yourself instead of understanding it was always within you, Taurus? So it's helping to heal this and to help us to really understand this and not just intellectually admiring that concept, but to actually have that direct experience with it, to have that inner knowing. All right. On the 25th, Venus is finally going to cross over Saturn and be in a new phase. This is like putting and setting into motion those new foundations from within, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. All right. And Neptune and Aries ruling this, and, again, Mars and Leo ruling Neptune. Repeat, 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 repeat. I can't express this enough. This is what you always want to look at in astrology. But this is truly saying there's a lot of love to be discovered from within and through what is actually true and connecting with that on an internal level. All right. And so there can be a deepening and an understanding. And it's also showing and lighting a path to understanding that things might not always work out the way that you expect them to. But whenever you are consciously working with things, you're always going to be given exactly what it is that you need, even if it's not what you expected. All right. And so this is changing our foundations. This is also very interesting whenever it comes to a global level, societal level. Because this is asking for society to make the choice to stand together and to put into action new values that are for the betterment of all, and then to structure society in that way. There are still going to be people who are delusional, who push back on that and become angry. And we're also on the flip side going to see a lot of people who are courageous in their efforts and will want to expose. Remember that I talked about last week with the full moon energies that I said that things were going to be exposed. And I even said there could be things about a whistleblower. I want you to, if you follow anything, that is happening right now. There was someone new who came out who was a whistleblower. This is really interesting because we have Cassandra tracking with all of this Pisces stuff. And this leads me to where I'm going to show you this chart, because now we're to the Pluto-Mars opposition, okay? But I want you to look. Cassandra's at 29 degrees Pisces, really leading this Pisces stellium, all right? And so she's also ruled by Neptune and Aries. There's more to come, especially since Saturn, Venus, Neptune, and Mercury have all crossed over the North Node. Same with Cassandra. There are things that are going to want to be exposed. The other dynamic is that this can create a lot of rage, and an effort to hold on to the past and to not take accountability and to spread more deception and lies as a way to again, not take accountability. So it's important for us to really lift people up who have the courage to be outspoken. This is just on a global level, all right? There's also some other things here that I'll get into next week pertaining to global stuff, but I want you to just keep that in mind. More people are going to come out and speak. Remembering that Cassandra only has to deal with Venus, but so much with Mercury. Mercury's in Aries, and Neptune is Cassandra's ruler in Aries. And so there's a lot of people who are wanting to come out. They're having the courage to speak, even if they're facing backlash or even being persecuted for it, okay? Persecution is a Virgo Pisces dynamic. And I want you to keep that in mind, all right? More of that is going to come up. So on personal levels, this is the day. This is the third and final Pluto-Mars opposition. Again, in the US, it's happening on the 26th. And this is the Greenwich chart. So we've got Pluto in the first house, ruled by Uranus in the fourth. We've got, Mars in the seventh and Leo, ruled by the sun in the third. Uranus and the sun are ruled by this Venus, which is conjunct Cassandra, excuse me. We've also got Uranus trining the south node and sextiling the north node. And we also have, Neptune still trining this Mars. Jupiter is squaring the nodes too. And we've got this conjunction with Chiron and the moon. So what do I want to say about this? Globally, this is about this need to initiate and cultivate community that is rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. And that is done through liberating from where people have over-identified with distorted value systems, all right, that are actually exclusionary in nature and create extremes. That's that seventh house. On a personal level, this is about truly initiating this process of where one is needing to individuate further and understand that community can come within. There is an inner community, and it can be felt through experiencing, messages from the unseen, from on high. This is like all this third house. This is also where we're healing our thinking and making the new choices. Remembering that Aquarius, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. Excuse me, this is the second house, and this is in the third. But, Uranus in the fourth house is where we're liberating from where we've over-identified with past ways of seeking validation, nurturing ourselves through conditioned values. And what we're really needing to do is to really step into the higher octave of Venus, this Neptune, and have the courage to really cultivate and to set into motion, to act on the self-love, the self-respect, the self-dignity, to heal our inner reality in order to stabilize our lives. This is where we're meant to throw off the past fully, of where we felt excluded or alienated or isolated. It's also Uranus trining the south node in the eighth house. It's confronting us with our guilt or where these deep insecurities and inferiorities, and we'll see it play out for some other people, superiority, have played out. And there's this need to really confront that and to heal ourselves from within. If you're wanting to purge past dynamics, it goes back to those emotional wounds that have been traumatic in nature are only going to be healed from within yourself. All right. Uranus and Taurus. And that is the transformative process. And so this just restates everything that I've been saying about this week. You know, the sextile to the North Node from Uranus is about making these new choices to become more self-reliant. It's the second house. And that's through understanding your own unique individuality that is a reflection of that which you come from. And this sets into motion new structures from the inside out. Saturn in the second, from your inner relationship to the outside. And then it gets to be mirrored, Leo, throughout all of your relationships. The seventh house, and how that's actually a way to fortify your inner relationship to self. All right. And, you know, technically this is a wider square, but the sun is squaring Mars. It's in a T-square with Pluto and Mars. And so this is about, you know, really coming into new ways of relating to oneself that don't have to deal with the expectations that have been conditioned. It's about what have you learned about yourself and how are you integrating that in a way that is fulfilling and healing for you, where you can be proud of yourself, where you can let go of what no longer serves you, to where you can meet your own needs emotionally, physically, spiritually, and to fortify those and to not need the recognition, the acclaim, or any type of external dependency, but to feel it from the inside out. It's like this last throwing off the past. And it's also asking for us to truly, what did you come here to do that has a higher purpose and a higher meaning? You feel it in your bones. It's asking for you to put that into motion as a way to not just help yourself, but to help humanity, no matter how big or how small, right? It's also asking with that Jupiter squaring the nodes for you to whatever type of thinking, Gemini, is getting in the way that is connected to a belief that you've had about yourself. It's asking for that to be healed. That resolution node is that North node in the second house, okay? So it's asking for us to stand fully in our own unique individuality and to nurture that is where we can be creative and to co-create. And it actually ends up helping other people, especially when we do it in a sincere and humble way. So I will go a bit more into this next week. The next day after this, there is a new moon in Taurus, and I want you to think about that. That is pretty profound when you think about these energies that are playing out. And that new moon is going to be squaring Mars and Pluto. And so I want you to think about that. I also want you to think about how on May 2nd is whenever Mars will reach 6 degrees Leo and we will officially be out of the post-shadow period. So everything that has been coming up since September is now reaching its maximum, it's, pressure. And it's asking for a full integration of everything that you've been learning in order to actualize and give meaning and purpose to that inner relationship to self, to really feel fully self-reliant, self-sufficient, to healing the past. That Pluto Mars opposition is truly about throwing off the past. Everything, letting it go, cutting the cord, saying no more. I don't have to be that person anymore. I choose not to be that person anymore. It is not who I am. And it's letting it go and healing and moving on. All right. And hopefully you've been doing this internal emotional work for quite some time now. So I will be here next week to talk about this new moon that's happening and the energies of this Pluto-Mars opposition, because I feel like, I mean, even then, it's still going to be at the 3-degree mark. And what is interesting as well is that that new moon is happening at 7 degrees or 6 degrees, 7 degrees of Taurus. So when Mars enters 7 degrees of Leo, we are out of the post shadow of that Mars retrograde. And that's happening just a little bit, a few days, well, a couple weeks after this new moon in Taurus. That means that this new moon in Taurus is directly squaring that degree mark of Mars leaving its post shadow period. So it's giving a lot of context for a new emotional cycle of inwardly relating to oneself in order to create action that is rooted in self-love, stemming from everything that you've learned since September. That is a lot. But right now, it's asking for culmination, liberation, healing, and releasing, letting go, and throwing off opposing, letting it, leaving everything in the dust, okay? So make the choices that you need to make. Mars is about choice making, all right? Act on what you feel called to act on a gut, instinctual, and intuitive level, and you cannot go wrong. You will learn along the way. It is okay. We have so much Aries energy. There's just, and Saturn is about to enter Aries, and Venus does it before, meaning Neptune. There's a lot of new beginnings, meaning that there's a lot to learn, right? It's not going to be perfect. It's new. It's like that baby that I was talking about, right? We're in the birth canal. The head is crowning here, and there's about to be a big release. Keep after it. Go to the finish line and cross it. This is this week. All right. I will see you all next week. Have a great week.